Welcome back, everybody. It's the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Bogman, joined as always by Pat Fitzmaurice. And today on the show to talk some movements in the rankings post-free agency, or post most of the free agent moves, is Heath Cummings from CBS. Follow him on the Twitter at Heath Cummings SR. You've been around the industry for a long time, my friend. One of my favorites. Love watching you and reading your stuff every year. So thank you for joining us. And we're going to talk a lot about these moves here.
Thank you for saying all those nice things. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that we haven't gotten to the point yet to where I've talked to somebody who said, I used to read your stuff when I was a kid, but it has been almost that long. I just came up on my 10-year anniversary at CBS, and I was at Football Guys for 5 years before that. So yeah, it's good times.
Yeah, no one's like, hey, you were the poster on my wall yet. You know, I'm probably your same age, so definitely not when I was a kid. But look, we got a lot to dive in here, Fitzy. Are you? What has been your favorite move so far of the free? It doesn't have to be fantasy, but Fitzy, what has been your favorite move of the free agency season? Something for your Packers or something for fantasy value?
No, the Packers haven't done anything of note, Boggs. Favorite move, I'm trying to think of. I did like, and we're going to talk about this, I like that Justin Fields found a home. Let's find out whether this guy can play or not. I like that he's with a team that's going to make at least a tentative commitment to him as, the long-term starter.
Yeah, that is probably my favorite move, too. It hurts me because I'm a Steelers fan, and all we have is big face Mace now in the QB room. But, I was happy to see Fields get a legitimate shot. I think, the beginning of his career wasn't the best. He wasn't put in the best situation in Chicago. He got benched for Russell Wilson, which is the Spider-Man meme, basically, I felt in there. Heath, do you have a favorite move so far?
I think Fields is probably the answer. Also really think the fit between Najee Harris and the Chargers, really one of the best fits of free agency so far. Now, I've already talked about it. We'll talk about it later on the show. You have to approach that with cautious optimism until we get through the NFL draft. But you talk about a team that we know wants to run the ball a lot, and a running back that, while he hasn't shown great efficiency, he has shown the ability to carry the load. 17 games each of his 4 years in the NFL, 18 touches per game pretty much every season. So it's a workhorse in a place where there's an opportunity for a workhorse. We love that.
Yeah, if he gets the role and he can't run there, he's basically Trent Richardson. So a lot riding for his career, I feel like, on this first year with the Chargers. But before we dig into the meat here, let me tell you guys, to get our consensus rookie rankings, dynasty rankings, or the latest redraft fantasy football rankings, just head to fantasypros.com/rankings. Mine are going to be updated in the next couple days here for dynasty and for redraft as well. Going into the NFL draft, of course, there will be big adjustments made post-draft, but if you want to check out rankings right now, we got a lot of trade questions the other day, Fitzy. Lots of people making moves right now. So, yeah, if you want rankings, go and check that out over at fantasypros.com/rankings. All right, gentlemen, let's dive into the meat here. Let's start with Justin Fields. And Heath, what do we make of Justin Fields' value now that he will get an earnest shot at the starting role with the Jets? Is this just the opportunity that he's been looking for? I think we all kind of feel that way. And how high are we moving him in dynasty rankings now that he seems to have a job for at least the next 2 seasons?
Yeah, I think he's definitely the biggest riser amongst players who matter in fantasy football, just because we weren't sure that Justin Fields would ever get another legitimate full season starting opportunity. This looks like that. Now, I think there's still plenty of reason for caution. He's not been very good at playing traditional quarterback in the NFL, and you mentioned it. His first situation with the Bears wasn't very good. I'm not sure this situation with the Jets is a whole lot better. So there's plenty of reasons to question it, but I've moved him up into that QB 15 range in Dynasty. I think you have to acknowledge the upside, that if Justin Fields hits this year as a starter and earns a long-term contract, his rushing ability gives him the potential to be a top 12 dynasty quarterback for 5 years or more. There's also the downside that if he's bad this year, he probably doesn't ever get another chance. So it's one of those guys, and we're going to talk about another one here in just a little bit, but volatile at the quarterback position. I think you definitely value Fields more if you play in a one quarterback dynasty league, because floor doesn't really matter that much in that format. You can go find a guy that's going to finish around QB 12 just about all the time. In a super flex league where you really need two starters, I might rank him just a little lower than QB 15.
Yeah, I have him right now at QB 17. There was adjustments abound, right? But I think he has to be in that mid QB2 tier, right, Fitzy? Where do you have him right now?
I had him as more of a low-end quarterback too right now. But you guys are guilting me into maybe moving him up. Right now I've got him right behind Jared Goff and right ahead of Anthony Richardson. So my fear is that what if he cannot overcome this sack avoidance issue that kind of torpedoed him with the Bears? And I'm optimistic if the Jets were to draft one of these offensive linemen, Membu, maybe at number 7, they could have one of the best offensive lines, one of the best young offensive lines in the league with whoever they draft, Vera Tucker, Fashanu, Joe Tippmann. So maybe that would help considerably. And I like that he's being reunited with Garrett Wilson, his old Ohio State teammates. But what if he can't overcome that problem? What if he is not the field reader that the Jets are hoping he can become? And what if he's out of a job in a year and a half? That's why I just can't get him up into the teens. But maybe I should. I feel like 23 is probably too low. He
definitely offers like a high ceiling and a low floor, right, for sure. Because as Heath mentioned and you just mentioned, if it's not good this year, is it ever going to be good? I think that's the question. And so you at least do what the Colts are doing right now with bringing in Daniel Jones to compete in that scenario next year. You at least do that if you don't outright sign someone better or for a big deal or draft someone high if it's that bad again. So there is a high floor and a high ceiling and a low floor for Justin Fields. But if you had to pick one, Heath, I think your ranking shows you're buying on Justin Fields, correct?
Yeah, well, those are the two guys. I almost wanted to say that one of them was 15A and one of them was 15B. Because I go back and forth between Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson. It's kind of the same case, right? Like both of them have things they have to overcome or they're not going to be good enough to be starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Both of them have top 5 upside if they can overcome their flaws. And so right now I've got Fields at 15. I've got Richardson at 16. I think you could make the argument that both of them have top 5 upside. Richardson's three years younger, which helps him. I don't really know that Daniel Jones is it's not a concern if Anthony Richardson improves at all this offseason. Now, if he doesn't improve, Daniel Jones didn't matter anyways.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I just think Daniel Jones, that's a perfect guy for them to bring in because he uses his legs too. You don't have to change the offense so much if you have Daniel Jones in there. So the adjustment wouldn't be big if Anthony Richardson continues to make mistakes, even if he does win the job outright. Can I go ahead, Fitzy?
Oh, I was just going to say, let's try to drill down on the Justin Fields value in Superflex. Let me throw a hypothetical trade question at you guys. Let's say you're sitting on 4 quarterbacks, and we'll say, just for sake of argument, that it's Jordan Love, Jared Goff, and J.J. McCarthy are your other 3. If someone offered you Terry McLaurin for Fields in Superflex, would you take that?
Yeah, I think I would.
So our dynasty trade value chart says that one's pretty close. The Field Superflex value and the McLaurin value.
I think I would because my team context there is it's Superflex. You said I have 4 quarterbacks, right?
Correct.
So I think if I need the wide receiver, I think that's a fair deal. I do think that Fields can get you more now that he's a starter, but if I'm desperate, this is the deal that has been agreed on. No one else is really making deals. I think that's fair.
Would you take McCarthy instead?
I would rather have McCarthy than.
See, I'd rather have Richardson. So I'd probably try to see if the McLaurin manager would take J.J. McCarthy instead. And I've been a little lower on McLaurin throughout his career, I guess, probably than most. Last year, he finally scored the touchdown, so it was a great finish. But you look at the targets, the catches, and the yards, he was pretty much the same guy. It's just Jaden Daniels threw more touchdown passes. So I wouldn't probably want to do that deal. But I understand why, if you're a true contender, maybe you make it. And there's more long-term upside with Richardson and McLaurin, but McLaurin might be better for a win-now team.
Fitz, would you want McCarthy, or would you want to keep Fields?
I think I'd rather have McCarthy, just because I'm pretty. I love the KOC system. Mm-hmm. Saw what it did for Sam Darnold and resurrected his career last year, working with Jefferson and Addison. Speaking of Addison, Heath, what if it was Jordan Addison you were being offered for either, say, if either Fields or Richardson were your fourth quarterback in that scenario?
Yeah, I strongly prefer Addison to McLaurin, so I'd be happy to make that deal.
Same. I would much prefer Addison, but I would probably take McLaurin if I had 4 QBs.
Yeah. Boggs, so, where do you have Richardson right now?
I have Richardson right now at 22.
Okay.
I have him behind Penix. I think Penix showed us he's going to make it. Richardson is still again, the ceiling is very, very high. The floor is very, very low for Richardson.
So I think that's interesting, because I have a hard time separating Fields and Richardson.
Well, I think
same.
Look, I think Fields has shown at least some flashes, and he has a lot of experience. Richardson has no experience, right? That was the issue coming in the NFL. He showed zero growth after missing most of his first year this season. So, it's been a little bit. We haven't seen a lot of growth from Richardson at all. We're starting to get to the point where I don't know if it's in there. We can say the same about Fields, because he was in a bad system, and then he went to a system that should have worked for him, and he was just okay. But, he got benched for a veteran. So now that he's by himself, I think this is the shot that I've been waiting for. So I feel like I like Fields better now, but this is something that could easily flip. They're definitely in the same tier. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, with Richardson, you certainly have to separate fantasy value and real life value, and maybe for Fields too, because I mean, in Richardson's first year, he averaged more fantasy points per snap than Josh Allen, who was the leading quarterback scorer that year. So there were flashes, but we're just not getting enough in the passing game from him to think he's going to hold on to the job. How would you guys handicap that? Like, if you had to put your money on either Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson to be the week 1 starter, who would you bet on?
I'd bet a lot on Richardson.
Yeah.
Do I get an injury protection?
Yes.
Can I have like a protection that he won't, like, injury doesn't count? I'd bet a lot on Richardson.
We will give you blackjack insurance on the Richardson injury, Heath.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think if you're the Colts, that's, you want Richardson to win this job. You want him to look good winning the job. But if they both look bad, I mean, we've seen enough bad of Daniel Jones. We don't need to see any more. I would rather see more of Richardson at least. And I think, maybe a separating factor if you're looking long-term, if you're in a rebuild instead of you're contending right now, I think if I know my team isn't probably going to be competitive for the next season, 2 seasons, I would rather have Richardson, because I think the chance of him losing the job at Indy and going and catching on somewhere else is still there, where it's not for Fields, right? This is the third team. This is probably the final team before he gets a big shot outside of maybe Sam Darnold, who we'll talk about a little bit later when we're talking about the Seahawks stuff here. So interesting stuff here. Anything more to add on Richardson or Fields, Heath?
Not really. But I think you did hit it right. Like, they are easier bets to make if you're in a rebuild than if you're a contender. If you're just, these are the types of guys. I did a mailbag earlier this week, and I had multiple questions about Superflex. Should I accept this trade of a random 2nd-round pick for Anthony Richardson? And I just wanted to scream yes. Like that. Those are the types of shots you take, and then just hope that it works out, especially if you don't care about winning this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Anything else on Fields or Richardson here, Fitzy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I am encouraged by Heath's optimism on Anthony Richardson winning that job, although I have this bad feeling that both Richardson and Jones are going to make multiple starts in 2025.
That's not good for the targets. Hopefully it's one guy, but we'll see. Before we talk about a running back here, by now most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. If you think it sounds complicated, it's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. If you think you're among the fantasy elite, this is the platform to test your mettle. If you're still not sure, you can test out your general manager skills for free, FREE, in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use the promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, Fitzy, I'm passing it over to you to talk about this running back here.
Yeah, I'm interested to get both of your takes on this. Boggs, yours, of course, too, since you're a Steelers fan. But we'll start with Heath, I guess. Where are you drafting Najee? Like, he was obviously the splashiest of the free agent running back signings. Now that, well, as of now, he's the incumbent lead back. Not incumbent, but the lead back for the Chargers. But knowing there's probably a decent chance the Chargers are going to draft another running back at some point, where do you have Najee ranked for Dynasty, and who else is on that approximate tier? Like, which running backs is he in between?
Yeah, he is currently my RB25. I think it's an excellent opportunity, a good system. We could see the most efficient season of his career, but there's significant risk, especially on a one-year deal, that they draft somebody younger, and that younger guy by midseason, it's just like the Jalen Warren situation. We're all saying, please give the ball more to the young guy because Najee's averaging 3.9 yards per carry again. And so I think if they don't spend a day 2 pick on a running back, if it's a day 3 guy, then Najee probably moves up into the top 20 and becomes a really good target for win now teams. This will be his age 27 season. We used to think that was probably about approaching the cliff. It's still in the prime, but approaching the cliff. So I think you have to view him as a win now guy, but a real opportunity if they don't make a significant investment at that position in the draft for 300 touches in an offense that should be amongst the best in terms of running back production. You look at what J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards combined for last year, and it's RB1 production. We've seen Harris approach RB1 seasons just based on volume alone, and he could do that in Los Angeles.
Yeah, about that, like, your rankings, have you interspersed the rookies yet, or is that...
No.
Okay. Then
I think there will probably be 5 rookies that rank in my top 25.
Okay.
I'm not prepared to say which 5 quite yet, but it's just 5 of them, depending on where they get drafted and how high. But again, so Najee maybe falls to RB30, or maybe he just stays at 25 because he moves up past some of the veterans like Ramondre Stevenson, like Tony Pollard, like David Montgomery, guys like that.
Okay. Like, I've got him at 34, but I actually have 10 rookies from this class ahead of him. I'm pretty bullish on this class. It's just like I'm definitely knocking Najee a bit for age and tread on the tire, I suppose. But like, I agree. If you're in win now mode, I think he's a great trade target.
And Najee is such an interesting case to me because I have him currently. I have him at 22, but I have him in this tier with Skattebo, Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson, right? Like, and depending on landing spot, those guys can go ahead of him, they can go behind him, and at, like Heath mentioned, if we get a day 2 RB to the Chargers, then it's really looking like the same situation that Najee was in last year with Jalen Warren, and you have to lower him down to where you have him currently, Fitzy, as a RB3, not an RB2. I think the thing watching him for so long as a Steelers fan, I think athletically he's a freak. The dude can jump, he can run people over, he can run past people, but he has no plan, I feel like, at the line of scrimmage. And if you can't run behind this offensive line that they've built, this wall in LA, if you can't run behind that, then he is probably just going to end up being Trent Richardson 2.0, right? So I am not. I have a good feeling that he's going to get all of the majority of the carries and touches for this team, but I don't know. If they draft Skattebo, I think he's a better running back. If they draft Judkins, I think he's a better running back than Najee. You know, probably not a better athlete than none of these guys are probably better athletes than Najee, but they're younger, less tread on the tire, and I just don't trust Najee from what we've seen. He had every opportunity in Pittsburgh, and he just did not wrangle it and take it. So,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely draft dependent. Like his value is going to change if they don't add anything before the 6th or 7th round. I think the outlook's going to be pretty positive. And Boggs, I thought it was funny the other night when we were doing our Discord show, and we got a question that was involving a trade with Najee on one side and Christian McCaffrey on the other side. And there were some other players involved too, but talk about a hard comparison to make. Like really kind of a tortoise in the hare situation with, slow and steady for Najee, and you just don't know what you're going to get from Christian McCaffrey. Like he's going to be terrific when healthy, but he's probably going to miss a lot of games. So
Heath, let me ask you, we didn't have this on the sheet, but what are you doing with Christian McCaffrey right now? Because for me, what I said in that show was that I don't believe a single thing the Niners tell us about Christian McCaffrey after what happened last year. Like, they extended him before we knew that he had Achilles bilateral tendonitis or whatever it is. I mean, it's crazy how much his stock has dropped after this season.
Yeah, he's RB 16 for me without the rookies, so probably RB 20 with the rookies. Like to a much different extent because his pedigree is so good, and he's been in the elite running back for almost half a decade. But it's not that different than the Fields Richardson argument either. Like if you told me that he has one more year where he's just better than everybody else at running back, I'd kind of believe that. If you told me that he gets 4 games into this season and we just never see Christian McCaffrey that we had as the RB1 ever again, I would believe that as well. He's a really big risk reward swing for contenders only.
Fitz, let's get your take. Are you trading for Christian McCaffrey right now, or would you rather trade him away?
Kind of one of those situations where McCaffrey should be on a contender. Like if you are in rebuild or retool mode, you should not have Christian McCaffrey on your roster. So if I was contending, I'd be willing to trade for him as long as the price wasn't too exorbitant.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk some wide receivers here. There's going to be a lot of wide receivers. Before we do, let me just tell you guys about our Dynasty Rookie Draft Simulator. It lets you complete a mock in minutes with no waiting between picks. You can customize your league settings to match your league's exact format. Premium subscribers can test trade scenarios by mocking with their traded draft picks. Prepare for rookie drafts and Dynasty startup drafts in one place. Use the Dynasty Rookie Draft Simulator to dominate your rookie draft today at fantasypros.com/simulator. All right, Heath, let's talk about some of these wide receivers moving. And we are just going to see a brand new face of the offense here in Seattle. The passing game is going to look so much different specifically. And I'm wondering how you feel about JSN, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, from a Dynasty perspective. Now that DK is out of the picture, Cooper Kupp comes in. And it's kind of a weird fit because they're both slot guys, but I think JSN can play wherever you want to put him. So
I haven't really moved JSN much this offseason. I was prepared to be excited as DK was shopped. I was a little bit disappointed when they made the switch from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold. It sounds like, listening to the coaching staff talk, they want to run the ball a lot more than they did. So I'm not sure there's a huge target boost. Cooper Kupp, I mean, as much as it looks like he's washed, maybe earns a similar target share that DK Metcalf does. That's never really been DK's specialty. DK's just been more efficient on those targets. So I've just kind of left JSN there as a low end wide receiver one in Dynasty. I still think because of the age, he's right there with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Ladd McConkey rounding out my top 12 Dynasty wide receivers. I think he's probably a number 2 wide receiver this year with the chance to go prove it as a top 12 guy.
Fitzy, are you the same? Because that's where I have him. I have JSN at wide receiver 11, but that is also where I had him before these deals. So I didn't move him at all because I feel like I was already pretty high on him. Is that the same range where you have JSN, and how are you adjusting for these moves?
Yeah, same. I'm still bullish on JSN. Wide receiver 10, just behind Drake London, just ahead of Ladd McConkey and Marvin Harrison Jr. But I do wonder who is going to be the primary slot receiver in Clint Kubiak's offense. And if it's mostly Kupp in the slot and JSN outside, how does that affect JSN? Can he be as good as an X or a Z as he is in the slot? So that's kind of a weird variable. I just thought that was an odd signing for them to pick up Cooper Kupp. But basically, like, I think we saw last year that JSN is going to be really good for a long time.
I think it's interesting that they've talked about wanting to play more 2 wide receiver sets, and then all of their wide receivers are sluts.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Especially like why you're gonna know what's happening when Jake Bobo comes out there, right? When Jake Bobo comes out, I guess we're running. It's pretty obvious. So they need a big wide receiver that can block. So I think Cooper Kupp will get more breaks in Seattle as well than he did in LA because of his age. I think when you sign a guy like that, you should do it with a plan. And I think you're exactly right, Heath. I think the reason you switch from Grubbs to Kubiak is to run the ball, especially when you have Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. That should be the identity of your offense. We didn't mention him in the quarterbacks because I wanted to tie him to these receivers, but how low is Sam Darnold now that he's out of this Minnesota system, going to a new offense? And, you know, we all kind of agree they're going to hand the ball off way more than Minnesota did. So he's not going to get those same opportunities that he had. And even if he did, he now doesn't have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison to throw the ball to.
He's my QB 24. I think you've got some of the floor concerns because what does he look like without the magic dust of the Minnesota Vikings on him? But you've also, and a worse receiving core than he had last year. But he doesn't really have the huge ceiling either. Like, I have a hard time believing he's going to be better than a high-end QB2. So still young enough that we could have another 5 years as a starter in the NFL. But if he's bad in year 1, he might only have 2 years left as a starter. He's a very low-end borderline QB2. And I've not added Cam Ward. He'll definitely be ahead of Darnold. Probably be another rookie ahead of him as well.
Yeah, I have the rookies in there, and I have him at QB 27.
Yeah.
Fitzy, I mean, Jackson Dart or Sam Darnold, if you're picking it right now.
I have Darnold ranked one spot higher, Boggs.
Yeah. I have him one spot lower.
Also 27, though. We're spot on with where we have him ranked. And, like, I'm not that worried about Darnold in a new system, but I don't know, maybe I should be. Like, it might take a while for him to settle into the Kubiak system. And we know that Darnold had it pretty good in the Kevin O'Connell system. So I don't want to underestimate the KOC effect or the effect of having Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison as your top 2 wide receivers. So, like low-end QB2, high-end QB3 feels right for Darnold in Dynasty.
And you think about the pressure issues that they had in Seattle last year. And Geno will stand in, and he can scramble too. But, I mean, when we saw Darsaw go down for the Vikings, they immediately traded for Cam Robinson because they didn't want to hang Sam Darnold out to dry, because we've seen that show before, and it does not work. So hopefully Seattle can fix their O-line issues and give them a little help out there. So we'll see what happens with the Seattle offense. We know it's going to look very, very different this year. Heath, let's talk about the Steelers making the trade for DK Metcalf. Now, we have no idea who is going to be throwing him the ball right now. As of the time we're recording this, Aaron Rodgers is still up in the air. Mason Rudolph is the only quarterback on the Steelers roster right now. So that is definitely a concern, but let's assume Rodgers gets there, or they sign a veteran. Maybe they even re-sign Russell Wilson, who seemed to be fighting with Arthur Smith at the end of the year. But let's say they get a veteran in there. Are we looking for? Would you rather have DK or would you rather have Pickens right now? Because similar type of players. I have Pickens higher because I think he's younger. I feel like he's a better wide receiver, but he is emotional, and I don't know how long he's sticking in Pittsburgh. And if he moves on, is he a 2 where he goes? Is he a 1 where he goes? It's not the popular opinion because his ECR is 30, and I have him at 20. I have Metcalf not far behind. I have him at wide receiver 25. But I feel like most people are already giving Metcalf the number 1 wide receiver in Pittsburgh. I don't know. I think it's going to be fairly split between them. But DK has a much longer history. So where do you stand with DK here?
I sure hope that the plan is not middle of the road 40-year-old quarterback Arthur Smith, and let's have both George Pickens and DK Metcalf on the same team. Because I just think it's going to be awful for all of them. Arthur Smith, his teams throw the ball 490 times per game, and we know 150 of those have to go to the tight ends. So I'm not, and you probably the tight end too. I hate this situation for DK. I hate it for George Pickens if they're not going to trade him soon, which I hope that's the plan. But if they, like right now, I've got Pickens at 26, DK at 28. That's without any rookies. So probably both closer to 30, 31, 32 in that range. I think they're kind of the same guy, but Pickens is 3 years younger. DK had some performances earlier in his career where it looked like he might be more than that, but that was really the 2020 season, his second year in the league. Since then, it's been pretty consistently just a borderline wide receiver 2, and now the situation's gotten much worse for him. So I think you're looking at a 27-year-old wide receiver 3 that you hope that maybe everything changes in Pittsburgh during the next 5 years while he's there, and he gets a good offensive coordinator and a good quarterback. But that's a lot of hope.
I can't remember where I heard it, so apologies for this. But Fitzy, do you know who leads the league in PI or in personal fouls since DK Metcalf came into the league among wide receivers?
It's
DK.
It is DK. Wow.
It's DK. You know who's number 2 since DK came in?
Pickens.
Yep, Pickens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that look,
they've got a type.
They do, and it's run blockers. I mean, I think Metcalf is going to be run blocking, and Pickens doesn't like to do it. But I think if he's going to compete with DK, I think DK pushes him to do it. So I think the Steelers are going to run the ball, which is not good for either one of these wideouts. But I've been vocal on this, Fitzy. You know I can't stand Arthur Smith. I don't like him at all. I don't think he makes it past this year in Pittsburgh. So I think if you have these tools and a new guy comes in, I think, okay, let's use the tool. So I think it's going to be a bad year this year, but I think moving forward, and I don't know if it's going to be Tomlin at the helm with all of the stuff around him. I would never fire Tomlin, but there are a lot of Steelers fans that want him gone because of the lack of success. Just where are you? How are you seeing this the same way Heath does? Because he's a little bit cool on the Steelers situation, especially with no quarterback. Or do you think they're going to figure this out and these are 2 good weapons? Let's just keep them kind of high.
So I'm more optimistic about DK, Boggs, and I disagree with you on this. I think DK is better than Pickens. I do. I mean, I feel like Pickens is – they're both kind of one-trick ponies to one extent, but maybe DK's got a little bit better track record, longer track record with his trick. Right now I've got DK at wide receiver 24 for Dynasty, Pickens wide receiver 31, and I feel like DK's value is sort of at a low ebb. Right now he's coming off a down year, only wide receiver 34 in PPR fantasy points per game last year, but man, this dude's averaged better than 1,000 yards a season over a 6-year career. He's averaged 8 touchdowns a year. He's missed very few games. He's only 27. It just seems like dynasty managers have kind of reached the point of boredom with DK Metcalf. And now that he's got this uncertain situation on a team that as of now isn't sure who its quarterback is going to be. So like just as a test, I ran a hypothetical trade by one of my buddies who's in a dynasty league with me. I have DK Metcalf in that league. He lost in the championship game last season, so he has the 111 in our rookie draft. And I asked him if he'd trade me the 111 for DK. And he said, maybe. He seemed like he was leaning yes. I personally think that if you're a contending team and can get DK for a 110 or a 111, like jump on that.
I'd pull the trigger on that too.
Yeah. Like even with the uncertain circumstances, I think there's a very good chance DK is going to crank out another 1,000-yard season if he's healthy all year.
What is the determining factor between Pickens and Metcalf for you, Heath? You had Metcalf a little bit higher, or was it Pickens a little bit higher?
No, I had Pickens 2 spots higher, and it's pretty much it's just age. Like one of them's 24 years old, one of them's 27 years old. I think they're the same guy. I'm sure one of them is better than the other one, but I can't tell which one's better. They do the same thing, and so I'll just take the guy that's 3 years younger.
Yeah, I like it. It's, Fitz and I are over here. I think Pickens is better. I think Metcalf's better. You're like, flip a coin. They're the same dude. I mean, because that probably what it is. I think that if you want to break it down, I think it's a much higher floor for DK and a much higher ceiling for Pickens. I think because Pickens is so much better at a contested catch than DK. Not that DK's bad at it, but I think there's different ways that Pickens can do it. I think DK, he has to body up. That's it. Pickens just has such a wide catch radius, but that head is not screwed on straight. So, and we've seen guys, look at how good Deontay Johnson was a couple years ago. And the screws came loose, and where is he now? Nobody knows because he's on his 13th team this year, right? So you never know when that stuff is going to happen either. So I'm hoping Pickens can get those bolts tied down tight and grow up a little bit and be one of the better wide receivers in the NFL because I think it's in there. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I do think it's in there. Enough of my dumb Steelers. What do you got next at wide receivers here?
Yeah, Heath, does the Rams signing of Davante Adams affect Puka Nacua's dynasty value in your view, considering that Adams' deal is, I believe, for 2 years? Like, where do you Puka rank for dynasty?
Yeah, I moved Puka down from wide receiver 4 to wide receiver 5. So not really. No, I think this is it's just a perfect situation because of what Sean McVay does with his offensive weapons. And that is what we all fantasy managers wish that all coaches would do. We wish Arthur Smith would do this. He force feeds the best players on his team. And so we've seen both Puka and Cooper Kupp see 9 targets, 9 plus 10 targets per game on a regular basis while they hand the ball off to Kyren Williams 20 times. And so that's pretty much what I expect to happen for as long as Adams is there. I think Puka will be the wide receiver 1. Adams will be the wide receiver 2. And they'll both be top 12 in the NFL in targets per game. Love the situation for Adams. He's one of my favorite vet targets in terms of a buy for a contender. And Puka remains a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. I go back and forth with Neighbors and Lamb and Puka and Brian Thomas Jr. and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like they're all just draw a name out of a hat each month. But right now I've got Puka at wide receiver 5.
Yeah, Fitzy, same for me. I have him at 6. I didn't move him. He stayed at 6 for me with the Davante signing. I love that signing. I think it's a really good spot for Davante. Let me ask you guys this. If you are a contending team, let's say you have pick 9, right? 2.9 for Davante Adams. Is that too steep for you, Fitzy, or is that a fair deal? You're giving up 2.9 to get Davante.
I think that's fair.
Heath, what do you think?
Happy to do it.
Okay. Yeah. So how high would you go to get Davante?
That's a good question, and it probably changes throughout the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, that late second is probably about all that I would want to give. As we get closer to the beginning of the year, maybe I'd give up a little bit more just because I don't like investing too much in players over 30 early in the offseason and before the NFL draft. Too many things could go wrong, especially when you got Matthew Stafford as your quarterback. Like, let's see Adams and Stafford both make it through the preseason, and then I'll feel even better about it. But right now, it's probably 209. I think really, though, I'm not sure there's a second-round pick I wouldn't give up for Adams if you just told me he's going to be healthy.
Okay. Yeah, so health parameters, I see. Anything else on Puka here, Fitzy?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I have Puka wide receiver 7. I do have him behind the 2 LSU guys, Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, and Amon-Ra, and just ahead of Nico Collins. Like, Puka's wonderful. I think he'd do well in any system, but maybe I am starting to wonder at least a little bit how much the Sean McVay system has factored into Puka's success the last couple of years? I mean, because we've seen the favored wide receiver in McVay's offense put up some freaky numbers in recent years. Kupp had that crazy season in 2021 and was basically on his way to repeating it in 2022 before he got hurt. Puka had more than 1,400 yards in his rookie year and was on a similar per game pace last year. But McVay sort of like rug pulled Cooper Kupp last year. Like he had 3 or fewer targets in 4 of his last 5 games if you include the playoffs. And now I don't think there's any chance a healthy Puka would ever be marginalized to that degree. But what if Davante becomes the favored son in the McVay offense this year? Like, I don't think it's going to be Davante over Puka. And I'm really not that worried about it for Puka. Like Heath said, I mean, I think they're both going to do well. But I do think it's possible Puka's numbers are merely good this year instead of great.
So you would probably put Puka at the bottom of that tier then?
I do.
If that's a worry? Okay.
Yeah.
I have him, Heath, you have him at the top of that tier, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lamb's in that tier with him, but yeah, it's
okay.
right. So yeah, I'd kind of view it as the first tier is Chase and Jefferson, and then everybody else is in the tier.
I put Lamb in that tier as well, but then I have Puka after Malik and Amon-Ra. So, yeah. But I have him ahead of Nico and Brian Thomas. But I don't know. He averaged more points than Nico and Brian Thomas with only 3 touchdowns last year, right? So
true. That
upside is crazy for Puka. It's crazy for all those guys. So it's a good time to be drafting wide receivers early. There's a lot of good ones. Before we talk some rookies here, let me tell you guys, if you want some live fantasy football advice with a little side of laughs, come hang out with me, Joey P, and the Welsh every Monday at 2 Eastern when my flight isn't getting delayed at twitch.tv/fantasypros. That's twitch.tv/fantasypros. Come with your questions and leave with our takes. We have a good time every single Monday talking to the listeners and answering some questions and talking about the most recent moves. And, Joey has the Florida Man segment, which I was almost involved in last week because I had a flight delayed from Tampa to Houston, and then they rerouted me the next day, Tampa to Cleveland to Houston. I was like, well, that makes sense. The flight from Tampa to Cleveland is just as long as Cleveland or Tampa to Houston. So anyway, at least I'm over it, so that's good. But boys, or Heath, excuse me, who are your rookie crushes? Not the guys everyone likes, the guys you personally are pretty smitten with here. Who are those?
Yeah, I think the guys that I'm at least overweight on, and I don't get too far into the sleeper conversation until we see where guys are drafted, because I've wasted a lot of time and energy on that in past years, and then the NFL just crushes me. So I'm not going to try to be too smart, but I will say at the running back position, I mean, everybody has I think the same top 3 right now, or maybe there's a little bit of disagreement, but I really like Devin, Neal in that same tier with Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Johnson. I think there's a sneaky chance that some NFL team prefers Neal to one of those guys, and he creeps up into the back of round 1 in terms of Superflex drafts. He's everybody one the top 3 tight ends for most people, but I'm not deterred at all by Harold Fannin and his combine measurements. I don't think when you have that type of production, even if it's at Bowling Green, that we should overlook it because of the combine. And so I'm just hoping that he lands in a spot with a creative offensive coordinator that has used a player like him in the past. And again, I think he has a chance to be the best tight end in this class.
Man, that's saying something. I like Harold Fannin too. But Tyler Warren had an amazing year. Fitzy loves Harold Fannin, but he's also got a thing for Colston Loveland. So Fitzy, you and Heath are going to be fighting over the Harold Fannin fan club here.
That is awesome. 117 catches, over 1,500 yards. Pretty hard to argue with, even if it was done in the MAC conference. And I don't know, Boggs, do we want to see him as like the second tight end in Pittsburgh? We know that the second tight end in Pittsburgh is going to get 120 targets. So
for this year, as long as Arthur Smith is the OC, I don't know, man. Darnell Washington already, they love to feed him near the goal line because he's a monster down there. So look, Harold Fannin is interesting, but let me throw some cold water on him just for a second. Yeah. And it's not about him at all. I think his skills are great. I think he could play as that big slot wide receiver Isaiah Likely type in a more passing heavy scenario would be amazing for him. But how many of these guys that we have seen that cannot inline block, they go to a team that thinks that they can fit him in, and then they just don't. That is my worry for Harold Fannin, is that he gets drafted to a spot where they're very enthusiastic about him, and then they just don't end up using him, or they use him so lightly that he doesn't make a fantasy impact. Are you guys worried about that at all?
That he's Jaheim Bell, basically.
Well, look at Ben Sinnott, right? Yeah. And they just re-signed Ertz as well. And he was a huge riser in the process last year. And it's going to be maybe next season that we see Ben
Wasn't the
Sinnott.
problem with Sinnott that they thought he was too good at blocking and they don't want to throw him the ball?
Well, that was what happened with David Njoku, right? You draft Njoku, you draft Harrison Bryant, and Harrison Bryant cannot block at all. And even though Njoku is better at both sides, he doesn't get to catch the ball because he's blocking, and Brian is running the routes. Ugh.
Yeah, I think draft capital and landing spot are going to matter a lot for Fannin. And when I say that I think he could be the best tight end in the class, like I think it's clear that Warren's the top prospect right now, and it seems like everybody in the NFL thinks he should be a top 15 pick. I do get a little bit worried about guys who aren't good in college until they're 3 years older than everybody else.
Yes.
Like, why weren't you good when you were the same age as the other guys in college?
Because Drew Aller sucked. That's Fitz has been making this argument with me all offseason too. I think it's because Drew Aller wasn't good, and I think it took Colton Nacua going from Kansas to Penn State to kind of, to move some players in this offense. They got way more motion in the offense now, and that distracted teams, and it made Tyler Warren open a lot, or he was the move guy on a lot of those plays as well. So I think just some creative offensive plays, I think that's what did it for Tyler Warren. So my chips are in. I'm pushed in on Tyler Warren. I love him, but the Harold Fannin is getting a lot of buzz from the fantasy community right now, and it's deserved. He had a monster season.
Yeah, I loved Heath's endorsement of Devin Neal too. Boggs, I'm reluctant to tell you that I have Devin Neal ranked ahead of Skattebo in my rookie running back rankings, just one spot. But I'm a big Neal fan too, and I was almost kind of encouraged that he did not blaze a lightning fast 40 time at the combine. Maybe that'll throw some cold water on his rookie draft stock, and I can get him in more spots.
You know who didn't last year? Bucky.
Yeah,
everybody lowered Bucky last year because he came in undersized and he didn't run well at the combine, and look where he is now.
I love that you say that, because like we've had 6 years now of any time a quarterback's bad when they're a rookie, you just say, well, Josh Allen was bad when he was a rookie. It's okay if he's bad when he's a rookie. And now anytime anybody has a bad combine, we'll just say, remember Bucky? Bucky was bad at the combine and then he was awesome.
Or Kyron.
Well, I remember Bucky because I was big on him and he had the combine and I lowered him. So I'm not doing it again. I'm not going to take as much stock in the combine as I used to. So, but where are you at on Skattebo? Heath, have you done a lot on him, or are you still kind of waiting to see the spot?
I think for most of the running backs, it's wait and see the spot. I mean, he's good. He's not one of my top 6.
Okay.
So I think there's probably 12 running backs in this class that might be good NFL starters, and he's definitely one of those guys. But I do have him firmly outside of the top 6.
Okay. Yeah, I'm flag playing. I got him at 3. So
there we go.
I mean, I watched him run over my Longhorns, who shut down a lot of good running backs this year, and do it by himself. So I was impressed. And I lived in Arizona for a long time, so I have weird allegiances. But I'm going to the Diamondbacks opening day next week, and the Arizona State team is throwing out the first ceremonial pitch on opening day now, and I'm probably going to be wearing some Longhorns gear or something underneath my shirt. So I might get booed out of the stadium. We'll see. But Fitzy, I think you had one more rookie question here for Heath, right?
Yeah, Heath, before we let you go, just which, if any, of the rookie quarterbacks do you feel optimistic about?
True optimism, just Cam Ward. I think, and it's more of a hopeful optimism, I probably will have him around QB 12 in my quarterback rankings when I put him into the rankings, but I think he has both the highest ceiling and the highest floor in this class. I'm anticipating he's going to be 101. And so I should say highest realistic ceiling, because if I just want to forget all about floor, than the guy that I would say that I feel optimistic about. Well, I'm the guy that was highest on Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson, so you know that it's Jalen Milroe, and let's just hope that he can be a somewhat decent passer, or that some NFL team can just design an offense around him and it works out. I haven't got on the Jaxson Dart hype train yet, and I don't know what to make of Shedeur Sanders. He looks a lot more like a guy who I could believe becomes a serviceable NFL quarterback, but not somebody we care about that much in fantasy.
Yeah, I think Shedeur to me is kind of like what we have with Geno right now, right? I think that's kind of where he is coming in. There's meat on the bone for every player. They're all still very, very young. But yeah, it's funny because I think Jaxson Dart would be good for Pittsburgh because he's got a massive arm, and we've got the two downfield guys, right? But the Steelers just they had dinner with Jalen Milroe last night before his pro day. So he kind of fits for what Arthur Smith wants to do too. And I'm a huge Jalen Milroe fan, but I don't think he can go to Pittsburgh because they need somebody to play this year. And Milroe is coming in, to me, is a lot like Anthony Richardson, right? Where he's just not ready. All this upside, but he is not ready at all.
Yeah, I don't think they could take him at 121. Maybe they could take him with a second or third round pick, but I hope they are not considering him at 121. He's just not refined enough to come in and play for them this year. Boggs, but that pro day, he did run a 4.37.
He had 20 rushing touchdowns this year. You know, I mean, the dude is such an unbelievable athlete.
DK just got like $150 million, right?
Yeah. 5
You
years.
think maybe they told him you're gonna be our fourth right tackle, and we're going to run the ball 700 times, but you're going to make $30 million a year, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's going to be Broderick Jones, Darnell Washington, DK Metcalf, and good luck trying to block that group, right? So, fourth right tackle, yes, very much so there. Any other quarterback? I mean, obviously Jalen Milroe is good. Any other late ones that you like in this class? Because it's pretty weak.
No, I think as like the class is pretty weak overall. Like Cam Ward, as much as I have optimism about him, he shouldn't be the number one quarterback in a draft class. And I think that has a trickle down effect. Like it's harder for me to get excited about a guy who I think is fourth or fifth best quarterback in a class when I don't think that the number one or the number two or the number three are as good as the number one or number two or number three in a given year.
Yeah. Oh man.
Right.
You're right. This is not the Kenny Pickett year, right?
No.
Like it's not that, but it's the closest we've had since that in terms of weakness at the QB position, I think. And I think you're right. I think Cam Ward is probably like, if you're ranking prospects on where they should be just in terms of skill, not like landing spot or availability or anything, I think Cam Ward would be in the 20s, right? Like he wouldn't be 1-1. He wouldn't even be close to 1-1. Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter will be fighting for 1, and Genty is 3. And you work backwards from that. Maybe Mason Graham is 3. So, but in terms of quarterback desperation, the Titans need a quarterback. The Browns need a quarterback. The Steelers need a quarterback. There's a lot of teams that are sitting there, and it drives that price up crazy. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with these. Anything more for Heath, Fitzy?
I don't think so. Heath, thanks for joining us. Great to have you on and great to finally meet you. It was long overdue.
Hey, thank you guys for having me on. It's been a good talk.
I can't believe two titans of the industry here have not met each other. This is crazy.
We've been following each other on Twitter for like 12 years. We just had never chatted before. I don't know how. I think I've done a show with all the other CBS guys, and I don't even like those guys. It's weird.
I was glad to be the glue here to make this happen. But remember, follow Heath on the Twitter at Heath Cummings SR. And Heath, please tell us about all your offseason work and where we can find it and what you're doing.
We are really ramping up our NFL draft profiles. We've got all of our Dynasty content over at the Dynasty landing page at cbssports.com, and been doing a lot of FFT Dynasty podcasts. Have to have you guys on soon.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
We love that.
Thank you, my friend. That is it for us, and we will see you guys next week to talk some more Dynasty. Take it easy, everybody.